All right, we're working on I believe it's this 1962 Lincoln Continental. This is the one that was popular back in the 60s with the suicide doors and all that good stuff. It's got the 430 engine V8 in it, and it's actually my buddy's car. He called me over a few weeks ago. He had a bad freeze plug on the back of the head by the firewall, and he was having trouble getting it out, so I went over there and got it out for him. We replaced that freeze plug and then brought it in here for oil leak. I'm doing a timing chain cover, front seal, brakes, just a general, I don't know, 3 or 4 repairs on it. And when I pulled it in, it was dumping coolant everywhere. And anyway, another freeze plug's leaking, this time on the passenger side. It's the middle plug. These big blocks, I believe, have 3 freeze plugs on each side of the block, and the middle plug right by the motor mount was leaking. And you know, it's not really easy to get to. I had to take the generator off and jack the engine up just to get it out, and to get it in with a brass or a steel freeze plug would be almost impossible without pulling the engine or the head or something like that, because there's just no room down there. So I'm going to show you what I do in situations like this. Now, I have seen some people on YouTube say that these rubber type freeze plugs are no good, they don't last. I don't know, you know, my experience, I've been doing this for a really long time, and I've used these probably going on 30 years now, these rubber freeze plugs in areas where you can't get where you can't drive in a steel one or a brass one or whatever. And I don't remember ever having one come back for it leaking. I actually had one one winter when I was probably 16 or 17, and I had a work truck, and I blew out 2 or 3 freeze plugs, a small block Chevy 350, and I used these rubber freeze plugs to replace it, and I had that truck for 2 or 3 years and never had a problem with it leaking again out of those freeze plugs. So, and I've used them in other vehicles too. So my experience with it, of course, you know, you might get the one guy that had one leak or whatever, I don't know, but my experience with them is they're pretty permanent fix. And you know, if you got a bad freeze plug and you want to pull the engine out to change the freeze plug, that's all good too. But usually these freeze plugs are not in areas where you can get easy access to them. So anyway, I'll show you where this one's at and what I'm using and what I'm talking about if you don't know. If you have a rusted out freeze plug or a leaking freeze plug and it's hard to get to, you can try this out. My personal opinion is that it will be fine and it'll last a long time. But there's always going to be people that will disagree or say it's not a good fix or the right way to do it. So that's fine too. I'm speaking just from my personal experience. So I'm going to show you what I'm talking about, show you the freeze plug that came out of there, kind of show you how to get them out. There's, you know, different ways to do it. The way I do it has always worked for me, and then I'll show you where it's going and put it in, and we'll torque it down, and hopefully it'll seal, which I'm 100% confident will, and then get this thing. I still got to do some more work to it, but hopefully get it back on the road soon. So I'll go over show you the freeze plug, what came out of it, and what I'm going to put in. Alright, so here we are, we're at the workbench here. This is the freeze plug that came out of it. You see here's a hole, and I actually didn't make this hole. This is about the size of the hole when it was leaking. I just kind of pressed up against it with my screwdriver, and a bunch of rust and stuff fell out. So the hole is probably a little bit smaller looking when I first found it, but that is the actual hole. That's not me punching. You can see the inside. It's not nothing new there. That's how big the hole actually was. It rusted out on this. So you can see the backside here, how corroded it is. There's actually a few more small holes on the outside of this, the perimeter of it. So this thing was done no matter what. So how I do it, I take a whatever I have, long screwdriver, long pry bar, I'll just get on one corner and hit it the best you can, depending on where it's located. Sometimes it can be a real challenge to get these out. You can use an air hammer. I've done that before. But normally, 9 times out of 10, I just use a long pry bar or a long screwdriver, depending on where it's located. And you just get on one corner and just beat it in, and it'll kind of flip in. Sometimes it'll fall on the block. If they do that, it's not a big deal. You can get it out. But usually it'll kind of rotate and flip out. If you get lucky, it'll flip out of the block, and you don't have to worry about it. This one actually fell down in the block when I did that. I just got a magnet. They can't go anywhere. I just got a magnet, pulled it up, and then I used a pry bar and got on the lip right here and just pulled it out. Pulled it out. So they normally come out pretty easily. A few good hits and they'll pop out. So this is what. Now to replace this with one of these, you'd have to have enough room to put your driver in here, your socket or your driver in here, get it up against the block flush, and then have enough room to swing a hammer, to seat this back. And that's just not, in most cases with freeze plugs, unless you get super lucky, there's just no way to do that. The frame's in the way, the exhaust is in the way, there's a myriad of things that can be in the way. With this one, like I said, it's very tight spot. There'd be no way to swing a hammer at all. Even when I knocked this out, I had to get a super long pry bar just to clear everything to be able to get any kind of swing on it. So the only other option you would have is to pull your head or pull your engine out. Well, this would be the block. Some of these freeze plugs are on heads. This one's not. But so you have to pull your engine out or jack it way up and pull it basically out. And you're talking a full day's work or more to do that. Or you can go down to your auto parts store, get one of these. This one's a Dorman. It's a rubber expansion plug, freeze plug, and all it is, this is the spot. This will go. You push it all the way in, it's flush to the block. This will be flush against the block here. This rubber will be inside there, and you just turn this nut, it's usually a 1/2 inch nut, until it gets pretty tight, and it expands this rubber and seals it. And normally there's a little seal on this underneath this nut here that seals it. And then it has a on the back side, it's also steel. So you got the rubber in the middle, and then this just pushes when you tighten this nut, it just pushes this all together, expands that rubber out, and seals your block. And like I said, I've never had a problem with these leaking afterwards. Just make sure the block is clean around where you put it in, and go ahead and tighten this up. And you don't have to go super tight. I don't know what the instructions are. It's been a while since I put one of these in actually, but you just get it to where it's pretty tight, and it should be fine. And also, there's no sealer involved with this. You don't have to put any kind of sealer on it. So don't. Actually says not to put sealer on it on the back here. So don't worry about putting sealer on it. So that's pretty much it. I'll go over and show you where my situation is on this Ford engine here. Obviously, everyone's, depending on what you work on, even the newer cars can develop a leak. I've seen some of the GM 3.4s and 3.6s develop leaks on their freeze plugs on the back of the head, and for whatever reason, corrosion and stuff. So and you can use these to replace even on the newer engines and newer cars. So anyway, that's my experience with it. I'm sure I'll get some people to say I'm a dumbass and you should never use those, but I've been doing this probably longer than they have, and I've never had a comeback over it. So we'll see. So I'll show you where this was at, and we'll put that in, and I'll just kind of show you, but there's not much else to say about it, I don't think. But anyway, we'll get over there. I'll show you where it's at, what's going on with it. We'll put it in, torque it down, and then call. Alright, so I'm on the front of the engine here. There's the harmonic balancer underneath this greasy beast, and you can see here, this is the first freeze plug, which you might be able to press a normal freeze plug in on this one. You have a bad angle kind of with the frame here, but you might be able to press it in, or hammer one new one in. And then the second one, the one that I pulled out, is behind this motor mount here. I got the motor or engine jacked up right now to get more room on the other side. And then there's one back above the starter. So there's three on this side, and the one that we had to replace that was leaking is behind this motor mount. So I'm going to get underneath the car the other way and get my plug and my tools ready, and we'll go ahead and install it. Now it's a good idea to clean out the hole a little bit. Just make sure there's not a lot of rust or debris or anything on the actual hole in the block where this goes in, and then we'll set it in there and tighten it up. And I believe they're 1/2 inch nuts that tighten it. But anyway, this is part of the reason why we use a rubber freeze plug, because even this one you can see it real easy, but it'd be a different story possibly trying to drive a new one in, just because your frame and all that, it looks like it's in line with the frame. It's actually offset. It's farther back in the frame than it looks probably on this camera right now, just from looking at the viewfinder. But you would have you know, this lip here on the frame, and the frame itself kind of in the way to do a straight shot at it. So it would not be, it's probably possible, but it would not be as easy as it looks even on camera to beat a new one in on this first one. So, and then the second one, or the third one, you have your steering knuckles and arms and all that stuff. So anyway, that's the reason why we use rubber instead of you know, regular steel freeze plug. So I'm going to go get the part and get it ready, and then we'll get under. I'll try to get you in on the other side. It's pretty tight over there, but we'll see what we can do. Alright, so here we are underneath this thing on the other side. I'm behind the passenger side wheel here. Transmission is right here. Got the starter right there. And right there is the hole. And that is actually offset pretty far. It's right in the middle of this whole frame right here. So you would never be able to get anything in there to hammer that a new one in. So anyway, I already took some steel wool and kind of cleaned out the inside of the hole. So I'm going to just set that new plug in there, and then we'll start tightening it. I don't think I'll be able to find an angle where I can show you how to do it, but it's pretty self-explanatory. Just push that plug in there, and then you know, start turning the nut. So I'm going to go ahead and set it in there, and then I'll show you what. Alright, when you push these in, it should be kind of snug if you get the right size. You should be able to push them in by hand, but they should be pretty snug when you push them in. And that's how it should look. You know, this should be flush with the block, and the rubber should all be popped inside the block, ready to expand. So all we gotta do now is just turn this nut. And like I said before, you don't have to go super nuts on that and over torque it. Just turn it till it's pretty tight, and then you should be good. Alright, so I don't know if there's much else to say about that. It's pretty much how easy. It's a very simple process. Usually the hardest part is just getting to the actual freeze plug, whichever one's leaking, and removing it. Removing it's not that hard, as long as you can get something on it and just knock it a couple times, and they should come out fairly easy. So it's just, you know, not everybody knows about these, and it is an alternative to putting a steel one in, obviously. And it's usually much easier to put those in than removing whatever component needs to be removed to actually put a steel one back in. So that's probably about it. You can pick those up at any auto parts store. Usually carries them. Dorman makes them. A couple other companies I think make them. You know, like I said, I've never had an issue with them. So that's about it for this one. I got a few other things, a few more hours on this thing probably to get it back on the road. So anyway, it's been leaking oil and transmission fluid and coolant all over the place. So we're trying to stop all that and get it to where you can drive it normally or regularly. So that's about it for this. Hope it helped out somebody that may not know about those or wants to know how to install it. If you do it yourself, it's pretty simple. Just you know, be careful when you take the old one out. If it falls in the engine, don't freak out too much. You should be able to fish it out and just go from there with it. So if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below, or you can email me on the YouTube page, probably direct. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day, and as always, God bless.